So good evening, friends. Good evening for joining us today for this amazing session that we are starting with this new initiative that the IIM Indore Alumni Association is taking ahead with the name Ignite. Ignite with a double I, which is an acronym for the new initiative, IIM Indore Growth Network for the uh, interaction of the entrepreneurs within our community. So I'm glad to introduce this initiative that the Alumni Association has taken forward with an objective to increase the alumni to alumni engagement for the entrepreneurs that we have within our community. Uh, it's rightly said that very few people make lives beautiful for someone else. And this really is true for the entrepreneurs that we have within our community. Ignite means Ignite focuses on showcasing them on this platform together where they can interact with our fellow alumni, share their experiences, their journey about their products and their hurdles that they face, their company, their products, and facilitates business networking as well. And the interaction of the alumni with alumni and alumni to student also is being facilitated with Ignite. So starting with today's session, we have, so this is a monthly series where every second Saturday of the month, we like to have platform. So we hope that this platform really helps them and really helps the entire community connect together. So this, for the inaugural session of Ignite, we have three entrepreneurs here together with us. We have Mr. Arindam Paul, who is the founding member and the head of marketing and strategy at Atomberg Technologies. He's based out of Mumbai. Hi, Arindam, I welcome you to this platform.
Yeah, hi Harshad.
We also have two senior alums. So Arindam is pass out of 2014 batch, PGP batch. We also have two senior alums who have joined us here. We have Mr. Abhishek Batewara, who is the director of Rohan Builders. The company is based is a real estate and infrastructure company, which is based out of Bangalore and Pune. The basic business is based out of Pune. And Abhishek is a pass out of 2006 batch, PGP batch. I remember I've met him in the 10-year reunion at IIM Indore. Well, I welcome you, Abhishek, on this platform.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. The third entrepreneur who is joined here with us is Mr. Prasad Ajinkya. Prasad Ajinkya is also a pass out of PGP 2006 batch. He's currently the director of technology at Home Capital, a fintech company, a fintech startup, which is based out of Mumbai and facilitating a lot of work in housing finance. I welcome Prasad on this platform.
Thank you, Arshad.
So it's a pleasure that we all are joining here to know about you guys. So I'll quickly just share the flow that we'll be following for the event. Each of the entrepreneurs will be sharing their journey with you guys here in the audience, and we'll give a slot to them in which they'll have 5 minutes or 6 minutes to speak about them, their company, the work that they're doing, and then we have a few question and answers that we have for them. And probably we'll, after the three entrepreneurs have done their part and we have all the question answers, you guys can keep posting the queries on the chat box. Then we'll later open the floor to Q&A. Right. So we'll start the session with Mr. Abhishek. Abhishek would start the session today with us. I'll just share a brief intro of Abhishek. Abhishek is the director at Rohan Builders. Rohan Builders is his family business based out of Bangalore and Pune as well. And he looks after the business operations in Pune. After his graduation, he moved to Macquarie in Sydney, where he was working with investment banking. Later, he moved back here in India and he started his own startup as well, which was based out of Mumbai, which was in solar energy and clean tech. And later, Abhishek, after having that experience of his own startup as well, he started managing the business operations of Rohan Group in Bangalore. He handles a company where he handles more than 1,000 people together and a lot of real estate and infrastructure projects. And I'm really amazed to see how he manages that, and maybe he'll share his journey with us. How does he manage all this? Along with that, he is also an angel investor, and he invests in a lot of startups, right, ranging right from construction technology to healthcare to fintech. So we would love to know more about Abhishek through him itself. So Abhishek, I open the floor to you.
Hey, thank you, Harshad, for the kind introduction. So, yeah, let me just give you a brief on my journey, and then maybe we can have a more interactive session so that it might be more interesting for the audience. So, I currently work with Rohan Builders, as Harshad mentioned. I'm a second generation entrepreneur. The company was founded by my dad and my uncles way back 25 years ago. And since it was since when I was a kid, so it was always there in the back of my mind that I'm eventually going to join the business. So although obviously there were many options like directly join the business post my engineering graduation, but then let me just give a crack at CAT. Somehow I managed to crack CAT, and then got into IIM Indore, and then luckily also got a very decent job in a relevant space at Macquarie Bank. So Macquarie was offering real estate investment banking at that time. It was pretty interesting because my interest was always in finance, and coming from a real estate background, it was like I think the job was tailor made for me to be there. So joined Macquarie, was there for about 4 years in Sydney. My experience was mainly into fundraising as well as uh, kind of capital advisory, and also Macquarie has its own very large prop book. So we used to invest in listed as well as unlisted entities, both land as well as equities. And the experience was mainly in Asia Pac, so ranging between Australia, Hong Kong, we did a lot of work. Japan mainly in logistics, as well as a bit in Singapore. So that gave me a very good, I think, exposure to real estate, which typically a lot of people from real estate background in India wouldn't have had a chance to get. So eventually joined back my family business in 2010, and uh, instead of directly getting into real estate, we thought, let us see if we can explore how we can diversify the businesses. So we looked at a whole lot of possibilities, including electronic waste, renewable energy, things where we could use our expertise, our network, and bring in some strategic expertise in the business. So eventually we zeroed down on a solar startup where I had my personal investments as well. Plus, I joined the business whole time. The idea was, so they had a pretty interesting product. It was a solar boiler, one of the first of its kind in the country, and the market was huge. The product was also going to be useful in solar thermal power plants, and that would have been a very big breakthrough for the company. Eventually, it didn't pan out the way we had, and talk about more later. But so I was there with the solar startup for about 3-4 years, and the kind of growth that we wanted at the scale at which we operate, we weren't getting that. And so we thought, instead of focusing operationally in just one business, it might be a obviously much better idea. Eventually, I need to come back to real estate. So got operationally involved in our real estate business across all our functions since about 2013. And on the side, the idea was always to look out for these early stage companies which we could help grow, which could help us grow within our company. And hence, we started doing a bit of angel investment. So I look after all our entire portfolio. We've made about 17 or 18 odd investments up till now across various sectors, obviously predominantly real estate and prop tech, because that is what we understand best. But also I have interest in education, in healthcare, and we've got some one investment I've made is in cryptocurrency. So yeah, just to understand how those markets work, those are the future markets, and so it gives a good chance to get a foot in the door. If some of them do well, then I can kind of jump in, playing maybe more active role, maybe putting in more funds, and hence growing that company as well as helping us grow. A lot of the real estate startups that we have invested in, the investment has come second. First was we worked with them as either vendors or kind of clients for them. And then we thought it makes sense to invest in them. Some of them were not even looking at raising funds, but we thought, nahi, aap mera hamara paisa thoda le lo. Let us be a part of your business. We'll help each other grow. So those were that is the angle for us in angel investment. So yeah, currently I look after our Bangalore business as well as involved in a lot of aspects of our Pune business. So kind of trying to head the business, but obviously I'm a second generation entrepreneur. The organization is well settled. It doesn't need me to be there in the business. But yeah, so it's like a great opportunity for me to lead such a large organization as well. So yeah, that's a quick intro. Harshad, over to you in case you want me to answer anything right now or later.
It's great to know about Rohan Builders. I think back in 2016, a lot of my friends also got the internship there. So are you guys offering internships this time as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look forward always to get in from Indore and then talk about the campus. And I'm sure there are no more professors which were teaching me, which are now there, but still really happy to get people from IIM Indore.
So that's great. In fact, amazing to know the journey. I mean, I've also been a builder. I've seen Rohan Group quite closely from you and from I've heard about others as well. So how different it is as a second generation businessman, family businessman, to be in the business, and how does, like, when you came into the business, how did you differentiate in this crowded market of real estate?
So let me first talk about how it is a little different to work in a startup compared to a relatively larger organization. I'm sure a lot of people have done a job and then started on their own, so they know that. But I'll just try and share my personal experiences with you. So working in there are obviously a lot of differences. Typically, as a startup, you end up doing anything that is required to be done yourself. There are so many things that are going wrong, and you try and fix them yourselves most of the times, which is great because it gives you a lot of understanding of all aspects of the entire business in detail. But in a larger organization, where at times a number of things are going wrong in a number of places, and you are obviously not going to be able to do all the firefighting on your own, it is obviously not sustainable. So bigger focus in larger organizations should be more on the robust systems and processes, so that the organization is not dependent on you. It does not need you. Because the organization is going to outlive you. That's the mindset you need to come with. The role has to be in developing leaders that can take your place. Plus, being a second generation entrepreneur, it's not like I could recruit my own team for the most part. That from that perspective, actually, things are inefficient, and you need to be a lot more patient. It's actually, you need to start thinking in terms of how do you complement the business, how do you bring value to the organization, because there are people who are maybe 20, 25 years old who have known me as a kid, and who know everyone in my family, and then the angle is that what are you going to come and teach me? So obviously you need to have your own strengths. You need to bring a lot to the table to earn their respect and earn their trust, who might be kind of skeptical about you when you join. So thankfully in my organization, it wasn't that I was made the head of the business on day one. I went through a very rigorous management trainee. After coming from Macquarie, I eventually became a management trainee in our organization. That's how I grew. Coming to how, real estate is obviously a very crowded market. Every locality will have at least 10, 15 projects. But how do you differentiate yourself from a whole lot of other people who are doing the same thing? And it can't be on price, because that's not how you can be sustainable. So what I believe is you can differentiate for any business, for that matter. You can differentiate mainly three aspects. One is the cost, second is your product or the design, and third is your service. Obviously, you need to be competitive in all three of these. There has to be one of them which really makes you stand out, and that aspect is design for us. So we differentiate on our product design. Given any 1,000 square feet of area, let's say, I can guarantee that we will be the most efficiently used or design space, very well, very good use of space utilization. Even seeing our facades in any of our projects, you will know that it is a Rohan project. So that's been one of our key strengths up till now. I think the next big focus is on sustainability. I've also worked in solar. I've done, I've understood the entire sustainability angle to it, and I believe as real estate developers, we can have a big impact on the environment as well as to a lot of people who are working on our site. So when I say sustainability, one is the environmental sustainability, the other is the sustainability from the aspect of people, where there is such huge inequity. So that's another big area that we are focusing on, but that's more from a customer standpoint. From a business standpoint, the key differentiators for us would be, we do our own construction. So that obviously helps us in timely delivery. It helps us in delivering quality, as well as customer service. In case, even 5 years down the line, if there are any issues in any of the units, we will always be there to solve that, not with people who outsource their construction to a PMC. Secondly, our funding model is very, very unique. And that's something that was kind of counterintuitive from what I learned in MBA school. So real estate is one business where you can you can do business without money. You have a landowner, you get him as a JD partner. You don't have to invest any money in the business, as long as you have the confidence to be able to finish the project, because your construction is funded by your sales. Typically, when we do any we buy land, we typically buy land with equity partners, but we don't do plain vanilla equity. We have a call option with any fund purchase, whenever any fund comes on board to buy land. So what happens is, typically the expectation of equity IRR from a fund is about 19-20% IRR. And if we can kind of not guarantee them, because it's equity, but if we tell them that, if they're able to give you 20-23% IRR within a limited period of time, they're happy to take an exit. And that's how we enter into a call option. How that helps is, we will not take a project which gives us less than 30% project IRR. Obviously, when we show it to the investor, we don't show 30% IRR, because then they'll not leave. So we'll show a little lower IRR, and then we have a call option of saying, maybe 30, maybe by 2.5-3 years, we'll give you an exit. So that's something where we are able to keep our upside. Plus, we have very strong policies. We don't negotiate. We didn't do that in 2008, nor are we doing right now. So some of these things are kind of can help us differentiating in the market. Right. Sorry, a long answer to what you asked.
No issues. I think a lot of questions that I was asking in follow-up have been answered as well. So it's a good thing. In fact, I would, for the interest of the audience, I would like to tell the audience as well that Rohan Group is also an angel investor into a lot of startups. So in fact, we can all connect with you for angel networking as well, as we develop the angel funds and within our alumni association as well, going ahead, having your expertise there. I would like to know.
Definitely. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I would like to know one thing, that post-COVID, we see a very change in the retail space and the merging of home and offices. So is this going to be a very short-term thing or a long-term thing in terms of design of homes having office spaces as well?
I think it is it's a difficult question to answer because you don't know how the pandemic is going to pan out. If it kind of the way it is going, maybe if it goes on for 12 months, 18, 24 months, then the mindset of people is going to be that this is how life is going to be going forward, and hence the design needs to change. I won't say that you need to have an office and home, because typically, at least in the markets we operate, there is a husband and the wife who are working, so you need two offices plus the kid who is studying, so you need three workplaces. That's not possible to be accommodated in a house, because the cost of the house is obviously going to be not possible, very high compared to what target market will change completely. So maybe it can be accommodated in the common areas. Can you have a co-working space within your residential community? So there are options to that, but I'm saying it is difficult to make big changes in the design with the current situation, because we don't know how long it will go out. For the moment, we are making minor changes, but more from the common area perspective, not in the individual unit plan, other than very minor changes in the individual unit plan.
Okay, that's great. So coming to retail, I would like to have the retail specialist that we have here in our panel, Arindam here, who's working in the retail segment at Atomberg. He's one of the founding members of Atomberg. So we would like to know more from him here on this session. Hi, Arindam. So guys, I'll just have a brief introduction about Arindam here to everyone. He's passed out of NIT Surat in chemical engineering from the 2012 batch. He's been a scholar boy all his life. He moved for an MBA at IIM Indore just after that. He's passed out of 2014 batch of IIM Indore. He's a quizzer at heart, and he writes very nice blogs. And he's always a marketing guy, passionate about marketing all his life. He's worked with Cognizant for 1.5 years, post which they've started Atomberg. Atomberg has grown as a company which has started right from scratch to revenue of around 150 crores right now, and have been selling fans and are in the consumer durable space. So I leave the floor open to Arindam to tell us more about his company and his journey. Over to you, Arindam.
Yeah, thanks, Ashad, for that beautiful introduction. Like, you probably oversold what I do and what I did, but yeah, that's fine. So I'm PGP 2014 pass out from Indore. Post campus, I worked for 18 months as a consultant with Cognizant, and then I joined the founding team of Atomberg. And the journey of building a consumer brand from scratch over the last 5 years has been one hell of a journey, and it's been very, very exciting. Today, Atomberg is one of the fastest growing consumer durable brands in the country. We currently manufacture and sell around 60,000 fans every month, and we have an annual revenue run rate of 150 crores and growing very, very fast. Our fans use BLDC motors compared to any normal ordinary induction motor, which results in a 65 to 70% energy saving. You combine that with the fact that the fans come with remote control, the fans have a very unique look and feel design. And despite selling at a price point which is 2x that of incumbents like Crompton, Bajaj, Orient, etc., there is a very strong product market price fit in the Indian market, even though the Indian consumer is supposed to be price conscious. In reality, he is value conscious, he is not price conscious. Today, as we speak, we are one of the market leaders in the e-com segment. We are dominating that segment in and out across Amazon, Flipkart, etc. We are growing very, very fast in traditional retail. We are present in 60 cities. We have more than 10,000 counters from which sell our products. So we have established this distribution from scratch in the last 3-4 years. And in addition, we also serve the top corporates, top institutes of the country, and we count all of them as our B2B clients. A lot of IITs, IIMs are also our clients, where they use our fans for their hostels, offices, etc. Over the last 5 years, we have raised close to $13 million in funding from tier 1 VC firms like A91 Capital, the Hero Group, Whiteboard Capital, IDFC, etc. We have also raised around 10-15 crores of debt funds. So total, we have raised close to around 100 crores in funding in the last 4-5 years. We have received multiple awards from national and international agencies like United Nations, WWF, the Government of India, Economic Times, Forbes, etc. But most importantly, what we really realize the most is the love that the Indian consumers have shown us. Today, if you go on Amazon and check, 4 out of the top 5 best rated fans are Attenborough fans. And that's the biggest reward that any consumer brand can get. And this is something that we want to build upon. We have a technical expertise in motors. We have come quite a long way in that expertise over the last 5-6 years. Have a team of engineers from IITs working constantly on the tech part. And we want to leverage this technical expertise to build products that solve real problems in the Indian households. So we're not going to stick to only fans. Fans is just the first product. We'll be launching mixer grinders early next year. We'll be launching a range of complete household appliances. This can be small appliances, large appliances in the next 4 to 5 years. And the near-term goal is to reach 1,000 crores in revenue over the next 4 to 5 years, which would be unprecedented in the Indian startup ecosystem. When you talk about hardware startups, most of the success stories that we hear about are e-com, software, IT, etc. But it's really difficult to build a hardware startup from scratch, and that would be one very satisfying thing to do. And in the long run, the aspiration today, we are already the most loved fan brand. Our ratings, reviews, social media shows it. In the long run, we want to be the most loved Indian consumer brand in the next 5 to 7 years. So if you're able to do that, top line, bottom line, everything else will take care of itself. So yeah, that's about me. Like when it comes to functional, I have developed some kind of expertise in B2B, B2C sales, go-to-market strategy, all kinds of marketing, be it digital, be it building a brand. Like the journey has taught me a lot, still learning, still day one, but some kind of functional expertise I have developed. So open to answering any of this. When it comes to general entrepreneurship, fundraising, hiring, building a team, and going from 0 to 1, that stage I've crossed. So probably if any of you have any questions, etc., Harshad, then I'll be more than happy to answer those. Yeah, so that's a short introduction about myself and Attenborough.
Arindam, I'm sure you would like to tell everyone about the Prime Day results.
Yeah, so I already told, so e-com is one segment that we got into very, very early. So we are one of the earliest adopters of e-com. So when we started selling fans, like no one used to purchase fans on e-com, but we understood that as a trend, it's going to pick up, and our focus was there right from day one. And yeah, as you mentioned, so on Prime Day, we sold close to 10,000 fans in the last couple of days. That's a lot of fans, considering that our fans come at a premium. So our fans are priced almost 2x that of normal fans. So we're the number one brand by volume, by value on all e-com platforms. And the aspiration is to be that across channels, not just e-com, in the next 4 to 5 years.
That's great. In fact, I'm sure Attenborough will have great fans here also. So I would like to know something from you. This industry, which involves consumer electrical appliances, is very competitive and monopolistic in terms of the distribution segment, which has established players like Harvest, Crompton. How did Attenborough plan to cut the clutter?
So probably if you would have started 10 years back, the journey would have been very, very difficult. But with the advent of digital and with the advent of e-com, it's been a level playing field when it comes to distribution. So it has leveled out distribution very, very clearly. So once you have a product market fit, once you have a product market price fit, and once your consumers love the product, it becomes, then word of mouth kicks in, and then the snowball effect kicks in. And once the acceptance is there in the digital, once there is a natural demand for the product, establishing distribution is not that difficult compared to if you want to start it from scratch when you are a completely new brand. So today, when we go to any market, every retailer would have already heard of Attenborough. They would come back and say, we want to sell Attenborough fans. And then the discussion becomes much, much easier. So if you are able to prove the product market price fit using leveraging e-com and digital, things slowly and gradually become easier from there.
Right. So you approached the institutes initially, as you said.
Yes, right. So even before e-com, the journey was, so when you started, it's very difficult to start with consumer right from day one. We didn't have the right product. So the first thing what we did was we started approaching institutions. We started approaching different IITs, IIMs, etc., because the founding team had that alumni base. But what we found was that these people, although it had a benefit, they didn't require the fans urgently. like already fans were running. Okay, so they understood that if they replace the fans, they're going to save some amount of money. But yeah, but that they didn't require it urgently. So that led us into a lot of deep diving. So we did a lot of deep diving to understand who needs this product the most, for whom the product is a medicine, not a vitamin. And once we researched that, we found out that it's the ceramic industry. So it's a small ceramic cluster in Saurashtra, which was our first cluster. And why so? Because these people use the product for 24 hours to dry the ceramic, and their electricity bills were very, very high. Their main raw material cost was electricity, one of their main raw material cost. And for them, the payback period was 7 to 8 months. So whatever they used to purchase the product for, they recovered everything in 7 to 8 months. So there we found our first product market fit. And from then on, we moved to adjacent segments like textile industry, cold storages, etc. And slowly and gradually to other institutes like hospitals, institutes like IITs, IIMs, etc. And then move to e-com and then to trade. So that's how the distribution journey has been. Because in the early days, when you do not have the right kind of resources, the right kind of product, and also the right kind of expertise, it becomes very, very important to focus narrowly. So our focus was, we'll focus on the ceramic, we'll take complete 60-70% share in this industry. It's not a big industry. No big player will focus here. So focus on a niche, win that niche, and then move on to the next part. So that's been a very core philosophy at Atomberg that we have been following, and we aspire to continue this when launching new products, new categories as well.
Amazing to know. In fact, I think that your journey, I mean, a lot of steps that you have taken have been the first for you. And yeah, I just wish you luck that all your steps, the first steps always go right, as you've always gone right. I would want to know that what made you make this shift to entrepreneurship from a cozy job at Cognizant, and how did you plan it?
So yeah, Cognizant, although it was a cozy job, like it was a very comfortable job, probably I was supposed to apply for H1B, go to US and have a life of a tech consultant. But somehow this seemed very, very exciting when this had come up. The product was just being built, and the chance to build something from scratch. So it seemed very, very exciting. And see, the upside was huge. And worst case, what would have happened is in a couple of years, I would have gone back to corporate. So that's the biggest safety net that a degree from IIT or IIM gives us. And that's why more people from our alumni network should use this safety net, because even if it doesn't work out, we can always go back to the corporate. There would be enough takers for alumni because of the credentials that we have and the value that we provide and the historical track record that we have in our careers. So that was one thing, that safety net was there, and the upside seemed huge. The opportunity seemed very, very exciting to build something from scratch. And the Indian consumer opportunity seemed too luring an opportunity to just not do anything and just be a consumer and not be part of the growth story of the Indian startup ecosystem.
Well, that's great to know. In fact, I'm sure we have a lot of questions that people are asking, and we'll make sure that all the questions are answered after we have an introduction to all the entrepreneurs here.
Sure. Yeah, I see a lot of questions. Probably I can take that towards the end.
Yeah. We'll move to our next speaker of the event. We have Mr. Prasad Ajinkya, who's joined us here. He's just like Abhishek Patewara, he's from the 2006 batch of IIM Indore PGP batch. Welcome, Prasad, sir, for this session here. So he's after his campus, he's an engineer. After his campus, he's worked with EduPristine. He's worked in various sectors at tech, then later in digital marketing, data analytics, business consulting, and now moved to fintech. I open the floor to you. He's personally been a very good mentor for me as well on a lot of problems, and he's a very altruistic guy. I think that's one quality that entrepreneurs have. So it's a pleasure having you here, Prasad.
Yep. Thanks, Arshad. Hi, everyone. Yuhu, Sujay as well. So I've always been involved in setting up systems, right? and we were the second batch on the new campus, the campus that all of us know right now. And we had to set up a lot of things. In fact, the first student committee had to do a lot of work. A lot of the rules and protocols were also established back then. I imagine the hostel and infrastructure rules have undergone massive changes since then, but we had a lot of freedom on the campus, and that pretty much meant that we got to set up systems as we saw fit. We built our own elective choosing system. We built our own voting system. We built our own Wi-Fi systems. All the PGP one laptops, etc., were purchased through the SWAC committee. So it gave us a lot of exposure to high stake transactions where you could not afford to make a mistake. And that kind of helped as we went on. During that time, we also built a couple of cool things as well. Clueless was me and a couple of my friends, Amit Sharma, if folks who have played Clueless here remember, right? That pretty much meant that most of my batchmates and my juniors and seniors knew me as a guy who built things. Straight out of campus, I got into Tech Mahindra, worked there for just under a year. I realized that a lot of IT sales was not really what I wanted to do. And during that time, another couple of friends of mine from the same batch, they were in Infosys. They were on the bench for 6 months. We thought, "Ki, let's use this idle time, like Arindam said, perfect time to take a risk and do something of your own." So we created our first startup. This was in the retailing space. We were doing brand merchandising for IT companies, and it went well. First year we clocked in some 20 CR or so. We got our Series A in the next year itself. We spent a bunch of that in building systems, business development, setting up workflows, setting up warehousing, merchandising, the entire gamut. After 1.5 years after that, I wanted to shift back to Mumbai. Uh, I'm based out of Mumbai. My native place is Mumbai. So this startup was in Hyderabad. Went well for 2.5 years. Then I said my adieu and I came back. During this transition time, you had the Lehman Brothers and the entire double dip economic recession. That pretty much meant that I was job hopping and landed myself a job in transformation consulting. This was again in the HR and transformation consulting space. Went on for 2.5 years there. Interesting experience, but I realized that I like building systems instead of building PPTs. So shifted out, and at that point of time, my seniors from IIM Indore had reached out and said that, do you want to join as one of the core team members of EduPristine? And that's how my journey at EduPristine began. We built out the learning management system and CRM systems as well. A large part of my role was on customer acquisition, and we kind of taught ourselves digital marketing and customer acquisition strategies. During that time, our budgets were wafer thin, and that meant that there wasn't much scope for mistake. And that meant that we had to fail fast and iterate very fast. We managed to do that, and we evolved our strategies with the different platforms. I remember there was this one Google official Google meet that had happened, and we were agency hunting during that time. And we asked different agencies what are the kind of performance numbers that they had, and all of us were surprised that our numbers were much better. So no agency could guarantee us an improvement on our own current numbers. And that made us realize that, hey, why don't we create one more course? At that point of time, EduPristine was primarily into financial content. So we used to do educational content for CFA prep, FRM prep, PRM prep, right? Financial modeling. At that point of time, we started adding to our number of courses. Digital marketing suddenly became one of our flagship products, and we started doing fairly well in that space. I've been a digital marketing trainer myself. I've taught maybe over 2,000 students or so. At some point of time, I realized that this is great, but I need to build more products instead of keep doing services. So then we started off product engineering and product promotion service, which was 13 Llama. Was working with on that, building that up with a batchmate of mine, and that was going well. 2.5 years down the line, we arrived at a couple of decision points. One of the products that we had worked on that got serious interest from media and investors, and at that point of time, they got us, to join board on their firm. Both of us did not agree, so we decided to part ways. I still wanted to keep running the agency side of things and the service side of things, so 13 Llama kept going on. During this time, I met the team at Home Capital, and their model was so beautiful about home financing that I had to shift tracks and focus on building their systems. So what Home Capital does is it pays up to 50% of the home down payment required to the home buyer at 0% interest, right? Which pretty much means that the uh, end user doesn't have to pay at least 1% in total home value terms uh, towards the interest when financing that home. This was a beautiful way of reducing the cost of homes, right? The developers are getting paid what they are asking for. At the same time, since credit is being more efficient, therefore we could, get lenders to lend to the deserving home buyers and still reduce the cost of capital. When I heard this model for the first time, I actually was shocked that ऐसा भी हो सकता है, right? But then when I thought through and I saw the cases happening, okay, I realized that this is something that I have to automate and I have to help. So that's how I joined Home Capital as one of the co-founders. And since then, we have been building out entire systems for both lending as well as lead aggregation and customer acquisition. Okay. So it's been going so far pretty well. We have helped more than 2,500 families with reducing their first homes, and I'm looking forward to scaling this up. Yeah, over to you, Harsh.
That's great to know. In fact, you have worked in so many diverse careers within entrepreneurship. It's amazing to know and amazing to learn as well. So I want to know a few things from you just to understand as a fellow entrepreneur as well. Like you love working with data and you want always wish to drive it for results. So when you worked there for clients, how has the experience been and how is the
So, Harshad, I missed out at that last 5 minutes, but
I was saying that you always love data and analysis. So you always used it to drive engagement and value. So how did this help your clients' businesses?
right. So the thing is that people work with a lot of fixed mental models, right? A lot of people who have been working in an industry for quite some time, they come with this mental model कि हमारे industry में ऐसे ही होता है. And I see most industries evolving at such a rapid rate due to tech that it helps to question that क्या ऐसे ही सच में होता है? Because most of the times things are changing at such a rapid rate, you are making assumptions on fixed mental mindsets. Okay, and data helps you change that. So when you start studying data, you realize that perhaps that's not the case. Okay, a good example is that EduPristine, for the first 5 years or so, there were zero efforts on brand promotions. All right, and we only focused on performance, and all the agencies that used to pitch to us used to say, okay, you need to do branding. And we always kept challenging that because we had data which gave us evidence to the contrary, right? Similarly, even in credit, when we are thinking of which is a good case or which is a bad case, when we consider different credit policies of our lenders, taking a look at the kind of data that's available. Okay, I see that credit data in this country is still nascent. So in India, there are 4 credit bureaus, right? And I don't want to take on the bureaus per se, but the kind of scoring that is available by the bureaus, a lot of NBFCs tend to rely on their bureau scores pretty much blindly. And that is scary because if you try to look at the case itself, there is so much of data underneath apart from the bureau score, right? You want a good bureau score? Tell you what, do not do any credit transaction for the last 6 months. After that, do take one credit card and do good, payments on that, and you'll get a good bureau score. And that's funny because different bureaus will have different scores, but all of that data is slowly being stored and that is available. As an NBFC, I could take that data and try to make sense out of it as well. And therefore, startups especially need to challenge that status quo by saying that, hey, let me look at the data. I hope I have answered the question.
Yeah. So what is one good memory of campus life that you have? Any specific that you wanted to learn, but you did not like it?
I know where you're coming from. So as an engineer, typically when you join the IIMs, right, there are always these high thoughts कि मैं भी investment banker बनूंगा. उसके बाद you get your first accounting lesson and वो सारा भूत उतर जाता है, right? I remember this very fondly that the first managerial accounts term we had, I was there are 7 CAs in the batch, right? And Professor Hari Prasad was kind enough to do relative grading. Thank God for that, because I scored 13 out of 100. I still remember those marks, but I still got a C neg क्योंकि मेरे पीछे इतने और इंजीनियर थे जो फ्लंक कर गए थे. ठीक है, तो मतलब that's the first recollection that happens ki all of this is great, but sometimes you need to look at accounts and then further studies. So for me, I kind of switched off at that point of time from completely accounts and financing. I just focused on systems and marketing. But running your own firm now into fintech, वो करना ही पड़ता है. मतलब accounts and finance both are you'll have to do it. You can't say no, right? So I wish I had paid more attention.
Great to know.
Yeah.
So I wish I would have met you on the 10-year reunion when I would have been in first year. I met in the second year. I had already taken OFD. So great to know, guys. Great to know about Abhishek, Arindam, Prasad, all of you guys. So we have a lot of questions. So guys, mind in case we take the questions right now from everyone. I'll ask you guys to unmute yourself and maybe we can try answering all the questions that we have. Yeah. So I'll just go for the question, like the first question first. So the first question that I can see here is that I can see the first question from to Arindam by Vaibhav Toshniwal. Hi Vaibhav. Why fan is chosen as compared to any other? Why did you choose fan as the first product compared to any other products?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Yeah, so we had an expertise in motors. So motors are used in different things. So as rightly Vaibhav had mentioned, why we have chosen fan. 2-3 things were there. One is the size of the market. So fans in India is a $1 billion market and it's growing at 6-7% and it's going to grow for the next 10 years as more and more electrification happens. So size of the market becomes very, very important. Second is fan as a category had not seen any kind of innovation in the last 50 to 60 years. A fan is a fan. For the last 50 years, nothing has changed. You bring in innovation like saying it's anti-dust fan, but that's not an innovation in fan, it's an innovation in paint. So as an industry, there was absolutely zero innovation. All the Indian companies that are there have been traditional companies. There are no MNCs. So the threat of aggressive competition was also very, very less. And yeah, these 3-4 factors gave us enough confidence that if we execute our plans correctly, we can easily get 4 to 5% of the market share over a period of 7-8 years. And a 5% market share of a 10,000 crore market is 500 crores. So that's pretty big. So predominantly, yes, these were the 2-3 reasons. The competition, the category had not seen any innovation, and the size of the market.
It's great to know. In fact, I think Saurabh Gaur also has a question on the same line. So I think Saurabh, your question is also answered. How did the idea came up? Because the technical expertise of motors was something that Atomberg developed initially. Right? We have a question from Amrita who's asking, how do you see Atomberg grow over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so over the next 5 years, in the fan market, we definitely want to get close to around 7 to 8% of the fan market. So which would be close to say 700 to 800 crores in top line. In addition, we want to get into a lot of other appliances where there is a tech synergy with respect to motors, where there is a channel synergy, and so that the overall impact of the brand comes in and your economies of scale would plug in. So we don't want to rely on a single product. We don't want to be a single product company, but get into multiple appliances. Mixer grinder is the next appliance which we have frozen on. So that will be launching early next year. So it's already there in the public and it's there in the press. Rest of the appliances, I'll not be able to disclose it in a public forum, but yes, we are working on 3-4 other appliances. Some are small, some are large, which we plan to launch in the next 2 to 3 years. And over the 5 years, we want to build a full-fledged consumer brand, which is really, really loved by the Indian consumers, and to give a 10x experience to the consumer, which the evolving Indian consumer really, really wants from this kind of traditional categories, which is household appliances, both small and large.
Right. We have Adarsh asking with regards to hiring, what are the potential recruits you're looking up? What do you look for in the potential recruits in the early days of a startup? I think Abhishek can also answer this one very nicely, I would say. I would ask everyone to contribute on this question. With regards to hiring, what do you look at in the potential recruits in the early days of a startup?
In the early days of a startup, 2 things matter. So I'll tell you how the graduation happens. So in the early days of a startup, you would need people who are very good generalists, who can do sales, who can do marketing, who can do operations, who can do everything. But slowly and gradually, as you scale, you would need more specialists coming in. You would need a performance marketer coming in. You would need a digital marketer coming in. You would need communication guys coming in. Similarly, in sales, you will need channel sales specialists. You will need B2B sales specialists. But in the initial days, 2 things matter. One is you need to be a very good generalist, and you should have it in you what it takes to get things done. So there will be 100 things that would be going wrong in the early stage of startup. So if you have someone who complains about things, because nothing is going to come to you on a platter. Like even a single meeting would take 10 calls, 10 cold calls, multiple things. So getting things done attitude and fast learner and a generalist. So these are 2-3 things which are very, very important in the early days of a startup. And as a startup scales, the requirement keeps on changing. So it's very important for the people who joined in the early stage to evolve themselves. So that also becomes very, very important. Or else they outgrow their roles. So it's true for founders, it's true for the founding team, and it's also true for the early executives who join the team. So it's very, very important to evolve at the same rate at which the company is growing.
Right. So we have one question to Prasad, which Abhinav has asked. How is your time split among operational activities and strategy? And how has that varied as you worked in different startups?
So during the early stages, typically most of my working hours, which is your typical 10 to 7, are used up in operational, pure operations, nothing else. And the weekends and couple of hours before and after, that's when strategy is put together, because at that point of time you can think through matlab, your normal day has so many things, right, that you typically don't get time to take a breather as well, especially in the first year or first couple of years of the startup. I remember both in Home Capital as well as in EduPrestige. The first year, there were days where I did not even get off my desk for the entire day, and the only time when you would get time to think was after the day effectively ended, where people don't call you with anything with respect to work, right? So most of our strategy discussions we tend to keep in the evening, uh, 7:30, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. There's no end to it, because when you have to think through and when you have to discuss, then there is no weekday and weekend. It's just ye karna hai, and you do it when there is some peace of mind, and typically that's weekends. So what we have done so far is, after it gets stabilized a bit, you tend to use Saturdays for think throughs. You tend to use Sundays for highly strategic think throughs, and Monday onwards, my Monday is completely booked with meetings, because I like to get the week started with a role, right? And I tend to fill up as the week goes by, but that is only during the working hours. During the non-working hours, that's when the think through happens, the planning happens.
As an entrepreneur, even when you sleep, you have more thoughts going on in your mind, I feel. And that's true for everyone here on this panel. In fact, there's a question for Abhishek as well. If it's not confidential, can you share the investing logic you use to evaluate startup investments?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously not confidential. And given that none of my investments are unicorns yet, you can let me know if there is anything I'm missing out on. But let me just talk you through some of the parameters that we normally look at when we are evaluating any opportunity. So this is like the first step evaluation to churn out just the top 2 or 3% of the opportunities that keep presenting themselves. So one is we look at what is the problem being solved, whether the problem is painful enough for the customer to be solved. And once the customer has used that product, how sticky is it? Is it like the customer can't live without now buying this product, or it's easily switchable to some other product which can from a competitor? So this is something on the product side that we'll always check. A lot of times we also look at which target market they are looking to capture. As Arinda mentioned, right, they went after a very, very niche market, captured 60-70% of that market, and then went wider. I think that is the kind of startups that we really like, who know exactly who they are targeting. It's not like, India is a big market and kuch bhi karke kisi na kisi ko to bechi denge. That's not how, and that's actually how a lot of startup founders pitch also. But if you have clarity on your target market, that is something that we always look at. Thirdly, we also look at the revenue model. So again, a lot of investors, startups have a lot of revenue models that they can think of. There is something like, product bhi sell karenge, service bhi denge, SaaS model bhi karenge. So that so there is no clarity in thought. So we like startups where, they know exactly how they are going to earn money for themselves and for their investors. Then we look at the team. We normally prefer startups with multiple co-founders because it's the startup life is very tough, and you need someone who you can rely on. Plus, if you have complementary skills, that obviously makes sense. And also how committed you are. Sometimes the funds that they are looking to raise is probably used to repay loans. Founder salaries are very high sometimes. So those are some of the obvious things that we look at. And then what is the vision, whether the targets that they have are unrealistic, because just to make a model look attractive, people tend to put very unrealistic goals. But then we walk them through, okay, exactly how many people will you need, how many months will you be able to reach that target, and if that, then there are explanations, and that still is an ambitious target, then that's something that is very interesting. Also, it's obvious that the business plan that they present in the first instance is not what actually they will be doing, maybe even 1 month, 1 year. So who knows how to pivot their business model given the challenges that they are going to face, that's something of interest. That's something that we evaluate. And lastly, on a personal level, I try and look at companies which I understand. There's no point in investing in someone just from the financial perspective, but somewhere where I can add value.
Okay. Okay. It's great to know. There's a question that Sujay has to all of you here. How do you guys balance your personal lives along with your professional lives, given that entrepreneurship involves a lot of personal sacrifices as well? So, would like to have thoughts from all of you on this.
Yeah, I still have my wife and kid around, so I'm assuming I'm balancing my personal and professional life. I've told them, don't disturb me right now, at least for 2 hours. I'm on a call. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people in the audience can also actually answer that. It's not something that is yeah, personally, I because there are a few things that I do. I try and spend some time on angel investing, looking at startups, because that's something I really love. From an operational point of view, I'm operationally involved in a Bangalore business, but strategically involved in a Pune business. So again, there is some time of kind of prioritization I do with them. Plus, it's a larger organization, so it's that safety net is there. There are a lot of people who I can depend on, who can get things done. And I personally believe that if I play football almost every alternate day, and that keeps my mind very fresh. That is things like for some sport times a week, and I also home. So yeah, I need to spend time for what. So I try and spend about an hour. Yeah.
What about you, Prasad?
I think post the lockdown, this difference between as personal life, professional life, it has kind of merged, and my while I'm working, my children are in the next room on a Zoom call as well with their teachers. So during lunch, all of us come together and have lunch. So uh, that issue has kind of become a non-issue currently. However, during the stressful times at that time, there is always some latitude given to me by both my children and my wife, and they have been there for me as well. That we know this is important for you, and therefore you go do your thing and be back.
Great to know. In fact, I'm also an entrepreneur, so I totally understand. So, so in fact, Harish has asked a question for Prasad as well. It would be great if you can share some thoughts on 3 parameters when you, while you're taking a call, whether a business process or a system has to be built in-house or outsourced.
Total cost of ownership.
Only
There's-
one parameter.
So I can give you an example with some illustrations on that. So at one point of time, whenever you're giving a loan, right, you have to take the bank statements, and then you have to parse the bank statement and to understand how the person is spending his money, or how he's getting his income, so on and so forth. There's a market leader tool that is available, that's called Perfios. Okay. Fairly expensive for a startup, but affordable for a large bank. Okay. We thought that why can't we build it on our own? So we built it out. It took a programmer around 2 months to build it out, and our cost of building it was lesser. Okay. However, the kind of functionality that Perfios has was awesome. Okay. We realized over a period of time that we will have to keep maintaining it. So around 3-4 days of that programmer's time would be required every month. Okay, and it was still better than Perfios because the cost of the OPEX and the CAPEX of Perfios was still pretty high as compared to this programmer's salary. Okay. Couple of months back, one of my co-founders, batchmates from IIT, he suggested his own startups tool. Okay, and he offered it at a super cheap rate. Okay, 1/10 to what Perfios was offering, and that rate was even lesser as per having my programmer work on it for even 3 days a month. That pretty much meant that I could park aside my product, which I have spent time building on, and I can just use this product. Why? Because I'm getting better quality. At the end of the day, I'm getting better quality data, and I'm able to increase the throughput of my system, and my total cost of managing that feature is going down. Okay. I would also add, if you want to have one more criteria, how many headaches you are getting out of that system, right? Sometimes you just want to move into a space, especially when you're scaling, where you just don't want headaches, and which is why you want something which is proven, and therefore you will buy out the system and instead of building it on your own. Okay, so that's pretty much it.
Yeah. A few questions to Arindam that the audience have to. I would like Arindam to answer the same. Rahul is asking why the name Atomberg, first of all.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. So Atomberg, you would see, is a mixture of two things. So one is the atom and one is a berg. So atom means like the smallest particle, the building block, and berg comes from an iceberg, which is like a huge structure. So the journey from the building block to a huge structure, which the vision is to grow to in the next 10 to 15 years. So it's a combination of from atom to berg, the iceberg. That's how the name Atomberg came up.
Okay. Arindam, also another question that why did not established players such as Havells, Crompton, Bajaj get into BLDC fans?
They have BLDC fans, and they have for the last 3 years. So Crompton launched BLDC fans like around the same time as we launched, but they didn't have the same kind of technical expertise. So fans by default is the electrical product, and BLDC fans involve electronics. So none of these electrical incumbents had those electronics expertise at that early stage. So they resorted to outsourcing, getting it from China, etc. which like deteriorated their quality like anything. And once the product is rejected by the retailers, by the consumer, it's very difficult to come back even though you are a known brand. So they're still struggling to come up with a stable product to bring in the market. And sooner or later they're going to come, but then it's fine. So now we have moved ahead with multiple products, multiple designs. So it's no longer BLDC, which is the differentiator. So now the differentiators are manifold, like right from smart fans, IoT enabled fans,
So
multiple products.
I can understand is that the digital first approach that you have taken, the speed to market is much higher than the established.
Absolutely, much faster.
That's
so for us, yes, like, and the feedback loop is also very, very high. So we launch a product, we do a pilot, we do a pilot straight to end consumers, figure out what the problem is, and then do a proper launch after 4 or 5 months. And these are some things which are not just possible, as Prasad sir had also mentioned. So some people, they are so engrossed in their traditional ways of working, especially these legacy companies which have been operating for 70, 80, 90 years. So for them, it's impossible to change. Even if they want to change, if someone wants to change, the CEO wants to change, it is impossible for them to change the culture to be a very agile organization and like take on the new things of e-com and digital in a way that someone like Attenborough can take.
Okay. In fact, there's Sujay who's saying that he's an existing customer who's bought the fan 2 months ago, and he's
really happy. That's very happy. So I'm most happy with that. Whenever someone says they're a happy consumer, that's the biggest compliment like anyone can get.
So in fact, Pranav has also mentioned that he met you in 2015 as well, and he's great to know that you guys launched the B2B platform, and you have an awesome team and great product. There's another question that I'm saying is being asked by Rohan Radhe. He's asking that how did you crack the influencer part of the sales, the commissions given to electricians, architects? Was that important or not important at all?
Yes, so electricians are an influencer in electrical products, but for fans, slowly it's changing. So as the market is moving towards premiumization, so a lot of people no longer look at fans as only commodities. So they look at it as part of the home decor. So once it becomes a part of home decor and it moves out of the commodity, so wires, switches, cables, so these are commodities even now. So while it might change in the future, but they're still commodities. So once the consumer slowly starts getting involved there, the role of the influencer keeps coming down. Having said that, we still work with a lot of influencers. We haven't cracked it fully, but we intend to crack it in the near future. But more than electricians, I think the actual influencers will be architects and interior designers for us. Like as we operate in the premium segment, like more than electricians, these would be the real influencers going forward in the next 4 to 5 years. You would see more and more fans being influenced by the interior designers and not by electricians, as the involvement in the category keeps on increasing.
Right. So for Abhishek, I have a few questions that people have asked me. They want to know when you worked in your own startup as well, where you handled 20 to 30 people, and now you're leading an organization with more than 1,000 people. How was the transition? I'd also like to know about any startups and your learnings from the same.
Yeah, so as I was mentioning earlier, it is compared to a smaller startup, it is more about having robust systems and processes in place, where the aim is not, because the entrepreneur is not going to be very, very visible in all aspects of the business. You are rather now looking at creating a legacy, having an organization which is going to outlive you. So the mindset is to actually develop leaders that can take your place, rather than being the person who is involved in a lot of things that you are involved in. Also, compared to a smaller organization like a startup, it's obviously more hierarchical, it is more lethargic. So you need to be more, things are inefficient and you need to be a lot more patient. But having worked in a startup, you know that how to bring those changes, how to bring that startup culture and startup mind in a larger organization too. Not in an organization as whole, but in smaller teams where each team is kind of working like a startup. So basically you give responsibilities so it's almost like freedom within boundaries. You have the boundaries that you map out, but within that you give the freedom to everyone to run it like their own small business, and that's how you grow with with these guys who can not just be an employee for you, but actually be a co-founder kind of for you, which works in a larger organization setting as well. And a lot is on the culture of the organization, because you're not going to be able to communicate to the last person compared to a small organization. You can't reach out to the last person in the hierarchy. So it is about developing a culture which can help everyone know that this is how we operate and this is how we should be working. So yeah, these are some of the differences I thought compared to a smaller organization.
In fact, yeah, having your own entrepreneurship. So it's like not accepting the status quo as it is as well. Always putting yourself into new zones as well, apart from the existing comfort zone. Great to know. In fact, Hemant has asked, what are the reliable sources, websites, or magazines to look for angel investors?
Yeah, so typically angel investors work in groups. That's actually how angel networks are formed. So there are a group of people will come together to invest small amounts of money, but as a group, a much larger amount of funds in your startup. So it's good to look for these angel networks where you can reach out to these angel investors, not individually, but as a group. And there are a lot of angel networks which have propped up in the last 5-6 years. I myself am a part of Mumbai Angels, Indian Angels Network, Let's Venture, Our Ventures, Venture Catalyst. So these are some of the older ones which have been in business for some time, but there are a lot of other angel networks as well. Yeah, Pranav has mentioned AngelList is another one. So it's good to get in touch with the people within these angel networks through maybe a member like me, or directly through the analyst team at these angel networks to pitch your own startup idea.
Right. In fact, I also want to ask Prasad about, there's a question to Prasad that what is the business model of your company?
So what we do is we pay the interest on behalf of the home buyer, right? The home down payment assistance that we provide, that is essentially a unsecured personal loan, and the different stakeholders on the platform, they end up contributing towards the interest component of. So, for example, if a home is being bought, then there is a developer, there is a NBFC partner, and there is a home loan provider, right? And each of these will be participating in the transaction. So what we have done is we have essentially charged processing fees to all of these members, so that we can use these processing fees as a way of funding the interest.
Okay. So, guys, there are some questions as well. In case you guys want, I can connect. We can connect all together, and to Arindam or to Prasad or to Abhishek as well later as well. So, in fact, okay, Pranav has asked the question: what is the interest rate on the loans that you disburse?
To the home buyer, it is 0%.
Okay. So, I also wanted to know a few things from you guys. There's a surprise Ignite prize that we have for our panelists. I want to know that how many times have you visited the campus after your graduation? Each one of you?
Yeah,
Abhishek?
I have visited only once.
Only once?
Yeah, okay. And that too, thankfully, the security at the gate, somehow I could get in because I knew someone on campus.
Okay. What about you, Prasad?
So I've visited 4 times, but 3 times I could get inside the campus. The fourth time I was turned away by the security.
Okay. How about you, Abhishek?
Yeah, I have visited just once. So
Okay.
yeah, I think the KRA or the KPI is not well set
Correct.
for
I
the
think
award.
there is a biased question
I
here.
think, yeah. Yeah. I was about to add a new KRA as well, that how many people you've helped. I remember I met you guys in your 10-year reunion, and you guys have helped me so much. So I'm really thankful to both of you when I met you. So
Likewise,
the
Arshad.
KRA, I should
Likewise.
include that as well. I'll speak to the committee. I'll speak to the committee on that. So it's a pleasure speaking to you guys. I would want to, you guys wanted to offer something to our alumni, to students as well, Arindam and Abhishek, in terms of opportunities that you wanted to discuss. So would like you to discuss the same.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, so we are in the journey of building a consumer brand. So and it's going to be one steep journey to build a brand from say a 150 crore level to a 1,000 crore level in the next 4 to 5 years. So people who might be interested in building brands, who have experience previously in building brands, more than happy to collaborate with them. At the same time, we also have a management trainee program wherein we work with some colleges already. So if the placement committee from Indore gets in touch, we'll be more than happy to onboard them for summer internship as well as for final placements, because we have a very strong management trainee program in place for our sales and marketing.
Okay, that's great. That's great insight. So I think Sujay has a few questions that we want to ask to. So, if LED market, the EESL, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, which entered the market and drove the sharp price corrections. So, your views on it? Have you
Yeah,
considered
so yes, absolutely. So
EESL?
we have been in touch with ESL since 2015. They tried to bring in a tender as well, but then so LED was a commodity. So like China was a major factor in LED. Chinese players were already there, and Indians were importing and selling it. But when it comes to fans, India is a very unique market. So China is not present in fans, especially ceiling fans and all, because the Chinese market doesn't require it. The global European, US markets also don't require them. So that was not possible. So since China was not involved, that economies of scale were not there. So price correction, the possibility of price correction isn't there in BLDC fans in the near future. But yes, in the long run, definitely their like ESL would come in because they want to bring in more scale, reduce the prices, and drive the consumption of energy efficient appliances. Later, that's going to happen probably in the next 3 to 4 years.
Okay, guys. I will thank you guys for this session. I would request participants who have more questions, feel you to Arindam, Prasad, and Abhishek for further queries and connect as well. I really thank you guys for the time that you've given us here right now, and it's been a wonderful session that we have had with you guys here. And it's always amazing to know more and more entrepreneurs who are working and doing so much for everyone. So to the audience here, you know where to take the first time home buying down payment, where to take the fans from, and where to take your homes from now. I think Modi ji ne bhi kaha hai, vocal for local is the new theme. So the first local that we all have is our alma mater. So I really thank you guys for helping us in here in Ignite and using this showcasing platform for connecting to more alums and more students ahead as well. I'm sure a lot of guys would like to connect with you later as well. So thank you all, and we'll be wrapping up the session.
Thanks, Arshad. I think it's a fantastic initiative. It was lovely to be a part of this, and I hope this becomes like a really popular one, helping all the alumni connect as well.
Yeah.
Likewise, Arshad. great job with this. Looking forward to attending all the others that follow this.
Yeah, thanks, Arshad. Like it's a very good job done in organizing this. Mrinal, everyone was involved. Thanks, guys, and thanks for having me as well.
Sure. Our
Or
pleasure.
any other questions, etc., would be more than happy to connect. So I'm there on LinkedIn. Just send me a request, and we'll be more than happy to connect and take for any professional or any other help that anyone in the alumni might need.